don't try and be someone you're not, because that does complicate your own teaching identity. On another sort of plane, I'm skeptical of the idea of true personality as a postmodernist, but for whatever that's worth. No, but I think that your first semester teaching is always going to be a crapshoot. You're going to, and I mentioned this in the paper. I think it is just a thing that you develop over time. You say, all right, this is a way that I can approach the classroom that somehow balances what I'm bringing in as a person, my own personality, my own experiences, my own experiences as a student, observing hopefully great teachers, and you figure out a way to use that. And I think you're always in the process of figuring out a way to use it. So that's not a very useful answer, but it's the best I can do at this point.
I feel like we talked about this at some point, but I don't know if it was in class or not, but you and I at least, maybe Rebecca, about taking aspects of yourself, and then kind of consciously performing them, not to the point of parody, but basically knowing going in who you are, and not trying to be somebody different, but at the same time not just going in with no persona at all. I think taking aspects of yourself that you know will work, that you hope at this point will work in the classroom, and working with those.
Should be Al Pacino performing Al Pacino.
If you could be Al Pacino, that'd be awesome.
I have another question. I was intrigued by your totalitarian father versus friendly father.
Thank you.
Sort of framework. I'm wondering if there are, first I have two questions. I'm wondering if there are other familial metaphors you use, if those are the only two sort of, this relations to the classroom we have, and then sort of bigger, what's at stake in using a familial metaphor to think about the classroom?
Okay. Well, for me, the two notions of father figures are drawn obviously from Slavoj Žižek, so I can't take credit for that. No, I definitely think that there is a risk in thinking only of the classroom in a sort of paternalistic sense, for all of the various reasons that paternalism comes with. No, there definitely are other sort of familial metaphors that we could employ, particularly as younger GTAs, people who are still very close to peers or fraternal or sororial, I didn't know if that was a real word, metaphors. And there are obviously other ways of thinking about families than the sort of Western nuclear family model. And so it might be productive to approach even the notion of family in a different way, to think of a more sort of egalitarian clan system or something like that, where everyone is working together toward a shared goal. As far as the sort of risks or benefits of thinking about composition instruction through a familial metaphor, I hadn't really thought much about that, but that is an interesting question, but not really one I'm necessarily prepared to deal with on the spot. So.
I wouldn't be either.
There's of course, just bringing that up, the one that you did, the traditional Western role that you didn't mention, which would be the maternal. And that, I know Rebecca spoke a little to, I think, as the, you didn't use the word because it's a value-laden word, especially now that we brought up paternalism, and maternalism nurturing the students into better writers, into thinking of themselves as holding some of the knowledge and bringing all of that into things. Again, then you get into sort of what you were
developing the trait list for this was whether we were inadvertently kind of inserting a gendered divide in the terms, and whether people were going to perceive that even if we didn't accidentally insert it, and whether we were going to perceive that in the results, and whether people have decided, and this is separate from gender, Phil could be a nurturing teacher, I could be, this slave driver, but whether people are going to perceive themselves based on kind of that maternalistic nurturing versus authoritarian divide, and I think they're going to have elements of that, but yeah, using familial metaphors could be a way to either inadvertently reinforce that, or a way to address it. Maybe.
I have a question. I guess this is for everyone being, given the situation that you brought up with the whole maternalistic, so the male father asking, telling your son to go to your grandmother's and asking, what exactly would be the maternal?
Much more the opposite.
Yes, I mean, wasn't that the other, both mom or father, wasn't that the other option? I mean, what's the maternalistic response to that situation? Because it was either guilt, blame, or it was authoritarian.
And the reason, Catherine, you point out that I didn't mention maternalism in my response, and the reason is that I don't know off the top of my head what a maternalistic teaching style, authority style would necessarily look like, because I think it's much more sort of open to different contexts, whereas paternalism, I think, sort of clusters around a certain set of authority practices, whereas maternalism seems to me to be much more fluid. And I don't know whether that's...
You're probably aware of how many studies have been done about the influence of gender on our students and how they perceive us. So authoritarian behavior in a male teacher is regarded differently than authoritarian and all that. So how does that work into your work in helping teachers develop persona?
That's definitely something I hope to examine, whether female instructors are more willing to perceive themselves as nurturing, and also I also would like to look at how their students perceive them. This is obviously have to be kind of an ongoing and larger thing. But yeah, whether female instructors with a more authoritarian persona are perceived more negatively, and then also how the teacher's own perception of themselves differs from or crosses over with the student's perception of the instructor. And I think that's going to, if I can avoid just completely biasing it myself by expecting to see that, I do think that it's going to be very gendered. I think there are going to be gender issues.
Plus then you have the gender of the students.
Yes, which would also be very interesting. We shall see.
And WVU has a lot of, especially Arab students. We have an exchange program with Saudi Arabia. We have a lot of Egyptian students, and so, and then like University of Vermont had a lot of Chinese students. So the way that students of different backgrounds, instructors from different countries construct their own identities and perceive the identities both of themselves and of others is obviously a major factor in this as well.
And I feel like sometimes I'm working toward the contrast. Like I'm aware that I look younger, that I am a woman, that I have these certain traits, so I can feel myself kind of being like, no, really, I'm all these things too, and sort of pushing myself to be perceived in different ways as well. And so, I don't know, it's a really good question. I think about it a lot.
Is there a hand in the back somewhere?
Oh, I was going to talk back to the maternal thing because I'm late to the game of teaching. Been my first semester of teaching. I was a late blooming graduate student in my 40s. So here I am in my first semester of teaching, and not within 4 weeks of teaching, so many of the male students, you remind me of my mom. That's great because I am a mom. But I felt like that was my kind of teaching. I'm like, well, that's great if you like your mom, but I find that the students for whom I remind them of mom, I get emails, I'm so sorry I overstepped, and I didn't intentionally skip your class, and it's it's very interesting to me that they're responding to me in that way, although I don't consider myself very maternal. I'm just like, do your work and whatever, but I find that fascinating that I'm like that mother figure.
And that's how
Are you going through that as
when
well?
people,
Right. It's kind of crazy.
I'm moving from the older sister persona in their minds to it's really important for me because I don't have kids and I'm not interested in playing that role. And that's what I was thinking about when you were raising that, like what would the maternal role look like? And I thought these really are roles. I mean, the totalitarian father, the friendly father, these are sort of stereotypical, images of men that don't necessarily always play out, right? And so we're sort of slotted into these roles.
Yeah, and is it because I'm a mom that I'm projecting that, or would I be that way if I were not a mom?
I think
my
part of it
child's
might
10,
be
so I don't have teenagers yet, but I'm just like, it is what it is. I'm sort of like teaching them life skills.
Yeah.
You gotta get your stuff in.
I think it's the combination of gender and then the age difference, because some of the
Yes.
instructors like Phil mentioned are 20 or 21. I'm not, and they do seem to relate to me much more in kind of a mom versus. I'd say more like cool Aunt Jessie, not so much a mom, but it's definitely that mom generation thing. Whereas with some of the younger instructors, it's different in a lot of very strange ways.
Well, I just want to get it. I was a teacher for many years before I was a mom, and a completely different person since I've been a mom, and I was like a bitch before I was a mom, so I think they sense. I think they sense. I think it just happened for me because, but I get the same sorts of emails, which I never had before because I was practicing my class with I'm not your peer. I don't care about your problems.
Yeah.
You do the work, but since giving birth, like they sort of, and I don't tell them that, but they sort of sense that, the PRC was running down, and I swear to God I was trying to make it, and somebody
The PRT caught on fire this year.
I
Gave everybody a free pass that day. Oh, you were there? No.
I was on another campus, yeah, and so, but I see a complete difference since being a mom, so,
It's not better or worse, it's just a different way of teaching. If I had become a teacher in my 20s, it would have been a completely different experience because I would have brought different things to it. And I think both have merit in their own ways.
I think those familial metaphors are dangerous though too, as much as I like to play the drunken uncle. But, I mean, no matter what kind of father you are or mother you are, you love your kids no matter what they do. And that is not true of our students, right? You need to have that's what you're saying, right? You need to have that distance too. So,
Yeah,
I know it's just metaphor, but still.
Even guilt and shame.
You can't be,
really
the other thing as a parent, your child does something and you're so devastated. I can't believe they did that. Why didn't they listen to me? But you don't want that with your students because they make their choices. It's their decision as long as you give them the tools, right? So I don't know.
And it just depends on the way you express it, because I have 3 kids in my class now. I don't know why they keep showing up because they're not doing any work, and I'm like, kind of zen about the whole thing. Like, you're not doing your work, like, it's enough. I mean,
If you were taking the first
what kind of mom I'll be? You run out of gas, you didn't fill up the tank? Like, what, just consequences of real life, kind of a realist, kind of, it is what it is, so. Not
Yeah,
fun.
that's one of the things that I was trying to say was just sort of that danger inherent in trying to play a father or a mother role. I think that was kind of what you were saying. And because in the end, it's a role of authority. How do you approach that? It's not necessarily mother or father. It's authority. And is it okay to mask that authority as a friend? Are we doing our students harm and our institutions harm and ourselves harm by trying to mask that authority as friendliness, or do we need to, in some way, approach authority in a different manner?
The danger of pretending that the authority is not there. I think the students, yes, they're in the first or second year of college, and I'm sure they're enjoying the freedom to make their own life choices, but at the same time, they do need a certain amount of structure. You need to tell them, like, here's something like there's a real life consequences. You need to tell them, if you do this and this and this, you're probably not going to do well in this class, and I'm not going to handhold you through every step of the procedure. So, addressing that authority, but not.
It's a delicate balance to have an authority of structure versus I'm just giving you grades because I'm empowered. Because it's not really like that. I mean, there is a relationship where, like you said, A plus B equals C. Like they're earning the grades rather than we're just sort of arbitrarily given or something like that. So it's interesting.
And in terms of classroom atmosphere, there's a big difference between an atmosphere where the teacher is on a pedestal in the front holding forth versus what most of us try to do in our field with discussion and so on. And friendliness is essential to that. So we have two things to balance, but if we thought about giving grades all the time while we were trying to do discussion, it would kill it. So you sort of have to maybe push that aside.
No, that's what I was saying. I thought that's what I saw as an argument, not a discussion between maternal and maternal, but a discussion between authority and friendly.
And I guess one of the, how we brought in maternal and maternal will be, can you use that as part of your persona? Was that useful for you, or would it be harmful for you? I mean, maybe one person would find relating to these students like I relate to my kids, or like I would relate to kids if I had them. If you don't have kids, would that be useful, or would it be harmful? I'm not a teacher, and I'm a nurse, actually, but would it help me to, or would it help them to see me as a parental figure, or would it hurt things and complicate issues in ways that would not be?
And to some extent, are they going to anyway? And should you recognize that and either embrace it or resist it, or just kind of bring it out in the open and examine it?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think, we can't discount at all of the brokenness and baggage these kids bring into the classroom with them. And so for some of them, if they have a particularly broken home life or something like that, and then they see whichever parental figure they feel is missing in their life, in front of the classroom, and they're not just this authoritative, distant person, they might immediately attach a parental, affiliation to that person, regardless of whether you intended or not. So I think, sometimes we can't beat ourselves up if we feel like, oh, they view me too much of the mom, or they view me too much of the dad. Some of that might be inevitable.
I think it becomes really challenging to, as a teacher, that was what I was struggling most with this semester, is I want you to succeed so bad. Please do something, and it becomes like a personal, you take what they do personally, and so I'm I need to separate myself a little bit more, you know what I mean? Because I kind of feel like maybe a big sister or something, because I'm invested in their futures, but then when they just won't, for whatever reason, become self-motivated, it's you're hurting yourself because you're constantly stewing when that's not productive, stewing why isn't the student turning in their paper? And
more years. Somebody who actually works with rehabilitating people in society. You can't want more for someone than they want for themselves. That was the best piece of advice I ever got, because as soon as I kind of engaged that, it was okay, if they don't want to pass this class, I can't want that for them enough, for them to pass the class. So you kind of let it go. But that's my favorite piece of advice. Throw that out there.
On the other hand, for some students, if you said to them, I'm really disappointed, you really could be doing much better than you're doing, that expression of caring, maybe they haven't had that before.
Caring, definitely.
Yeah. But at the same time, I had a girl last semester who was really upset with her C+, I think, in midterm. Who year and after referred to as angry band girl, because she was very angry and she played trombone, I think, in the marching band. And I think she would have loved for me to have bumped her C+ at midterm up to a B out of pity or something. And I'm like, no, that was a very legitimate C+. If you're unhappy with it, put in the extra effort. And she did. Her last two major papers of the semester were amazing. She participated in discussion. She still glared at me for a good few weeks. But I think, just not coddling her at that important stage, she did really well. She actually came out of the class with a low A, and she was really happy with that. So, yeah.
Well, friendly but not friends, that I know I couldn't pull off saying I'm disappointed in you to a student or someone. But maybe you could, and they could see that there'd be part of that's not me, it'd be being someone I'm not. Whereas maybe that works out for you, and so it'd be a very different styles about how embracing that.
I want to ask an extraordinarily trivial question related to this comment about how you should be friendly but not friends. Does that include Facebook? Should comp instructors, should professors be friends with their students on Facebook? I'm just curious what people think.
I say no.
I'm not saying there should be a policy. I'm just curious what people think.
Personally, I have one former student as a Facebook friend right now, out of, like the 40 that I had last semester. But I let him, I let him be the person to make the friends request. I didn't friends request any of my students. That would just be creepy. It was very unusual. It was a student who had a common interest. We were both interested in sustainable agriculture, so we had this common interest that we wanted to be able to share information about. So I think it probably goes on a case-by-case basis. I would lean very much towards no, but I think there are exceptions. Definitely not while they're your students. That would be stupid.
Yeah, I mean, my first semester, there were a couple of people who friend requested me after the end of the semester, and I accepted them, but not anymore. At this point, I don't need to be Facebook friends with any of my students. So, absolutely never during the semester, obviously, but at this point, there's nothing in it for me to be friends with them on Facebook. And it's sort of awkward because I have a teaching blog where I post assignments that I'm giving, and I post evaluations of how well they work. And so I don't necessarily want either current or former students to be confronted with that. So.
Well, I know Jessi has too. She has her teacher Facebook page where she's friends with students, and then she has her personal secret Facebook page. Kind of thing, and that's kind of interesting.
A lot of instructors, I've noticed in the one-on-one program, including Phil here, have used variations on their names as their Facebook name. So the student wants to friend you, they have to really want to friend you, or be a friend of a friend already, or something like that. So.
And use something other than your university email address.
Right. Yeah. So it's kind of.
Just to contrast that, I have a colleague who does that with a professional and a private Facebook, and he actually uses his Facebook as a teaching tool. I'm not really yet, because I was the one talking about grammar yesterday. I'm not savvy, I'm not cool. But he is, and he does a lot of, he uses his Facebook, as far as I understand, to actually engage with the students and to, because they're more comfortable, I think, contacting him by Facebook than by email. Which is just very, very strange. But if you're dealing with, 17, 18, 19-year-olds, they are often going to be more comfortable with that medium. And so he actually uses that as part of his teaching. He posts, answers. They can ask him questions on Facebook, and he can respond, and then the whole class can actually see the response and be part of that conversation outside of the classroom. Even though we have a course management system, which could do that, this is actually going to where they live and coming to them where they are, which is only slightly related to what you guys are talking about.
No, it's very interesting though. We know there's a friend of a friend who teaches in biology, and she's teaching Bio 3 something, so it's a little bit higher level course. But she has a Facebook page for the course. I need to kind of actually look at that and see how she manages to keep them away from her I think it's just security settings, I'm sure. But they can interact with her through that page, and she can also post links to things. She can post videos. She can ask them questions, have them answer. And sometimes they answer their own questions. They'll get into discussions too, completely kind of spontaneously and organically, which has been really neat. I don't know if that works out that way for every class, but I'd be interested to try it. Maybe some other year.
Well, it depends on the student population that you're dealing with. I teach mostly the
doing a blog project with my students this semester, and I am definitely learning that not all digital media is created equal. Out of my, I think, 20 students in my second section, only 2 or 3 of them said they knew what a blog is, which was really kind of amazing to me, but...
Well, especially considering that Facebook and Twitter are technically
Yeah.
microblogs, so they just don't know that they know it.
Yeah.
Is that a one-on-one class or one-on-two?
One-on-one.
You one-on-one?
We're all on one
Yep.
so far. He's teaching 102 over the summer, so if you have tips for him. Another WVU person back there, that's the trade time.
Well, thanks for coming out. I don't think